Yeshua asked the question, when the Son of Man comes, will he find belief in the earth? Hi, this is Barry Phillips along with Mike Clayton, and a little different setup this week. We're visiting in North Carolina with Mike and Kathy, and want to seize an opportunity here to do a special style recording. Not often we get to do this, but we're glad that you can join us for this discussion about faith or belief. Do you have any? Are you using what you got?
What's your definition?
What is your definition? How do you know when what you're doing is an act of faith? Mike, I remember hearing years ago in a black gospel church, faith, just a little bit of faith. You don't need a whole lot, just use what you got.
Yeah, just a mustard seed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Yeshua is returning. I mean, any glance at the headlines today in the newspapers, newscasts, internet, anything will tell you this is it, folks. We're on the path to the return of our King. Events are escalating. Will you be acting faithfully? Maybe that's a better way, Mike, to put it, is acting faithfully, faithfulness.
Yeah. Okay. Let's go to something you just hit on right there, just to kind of, let's take a little trail and then come back to it. That you said, okay, we've been praying, your kingdom come, and it looks like this is it. And okay, the typical response to that, as I heard the other day, is that every generation, for all the way back to Adam and Eve, when the original promise was given, every generation's had their, this is it, this is it, this is it. So, well, maybe this isn't it. Well, I got a question for you. If this isn't it, what is it going to look like in about 6 months? Okay, what is it going to look like in a few years from now? Can you imagine today a society that continues to go on like it is? We've got, Kim Jong. He was Kim Jong Il and Kim Jong Un, and now he's Un no more. It looks like, we've got his
Kim
crazy.
Jong-un.
Yeah, Kim Jong-un. We got his crazy sister that I've heard is, if you can possibly believe, is crazier than he is. You have the world, the very framework of the world is being destroyed. We look at the news every morning, and Wisconsin now on fire, literally on fire. What are people holding out for? The new normal. Okay, is the new normal that every morning you have another city on fire? I just don't understand this thought process of, well, let's just pray that it gets better. To me, that doesn't. I don't have a place for that in my brain.
Someone told me just the other day, Mike, that after the election is over, in their opinion, everything's going to go back to normal. The mask thing will be over, and the fires will settle down. We'll be back to normal after, and in their estimation, after the president is reelected. And it was an elderly person, and I didn't want to rear up in my perceived wisdom and say you just got to get over that pipe dream. Yeah. But I don't believe it's going to go back to any resemblance of what it was this time last year.
And what is normal to begin with? I mean, the last time we saw normal was, like a couple of minutes before Adam and Eve ate of the fruit. Okay, that's normal. Everything else from that point on, 6,000 years ago, has been abnormal. So if you think that abnormal is normal, you need to go back and redefine some words to begin with.
I almost followed that.
You almost followed.
I almost got that.
Well,
yeah,
that's because of our wonderful golf game yesterday.
That wasn't normal.
That left us in total. It left us totaled. It wasn't good. We just walked around the course and earned a very good, nice walk with chasing the ball down and losing a number. But that's another subject, folks. Okay, so you mentioned faith. Or actually, I want to go back again to something else. You first of all began with the verse, when the Son of Man returns, will he find belief? Now, I find it interesting the other day, and this is not a political statement, This is just an interesting statement in my thoughts. That they, when introducing the current nominee for vice president on the Democrat side, they said, and she is a Baptist believer. Now, they didn't just say she's a Baptist, but they introduced her as a Baptist believer.
Interesting. I didn't know that.
Yeah. So, I mean, why is it they were putting that word in like that with someone who's going totally against everything as a former Baptist? And she goes against everything that at least mainstream, well, I can't say that anymore, traditional Baptist churches teach and believe. So this word believer bothered me to begin with.
Right.
The demons believe and they tremble. So somebody can be a believer and be, could we say, demonically possessed?
Well, we'll discuss that next week, folks, and figure that one out. Y'all fast and pray. The word here is, will he find belief?
Yeah.
Belief is, the question is not being asked, will he find people who have a mindset that says he's the Messiah? A mental decision, he's the Messiah. Is that belief? No, that's basically an answer to a question. Emunah, from which we get belief in Hebrew, it's not the noun belief.
Yeah.
It's faithfulness.
It's a verb.
It's being faithful.
Mm-hmm.
The activity of faithfulness. What should be said here in our English translation is, will he find faithfulness in the earth, or belief demonstrated in the earth?
I think the wording there you just hit, demonstrated belief, is where we could go with that, because to just have faith. Okay, I have faith in a lot of things. You can have faith in a chair that is going to hold you up, but until you sit down, you're not acting upon that faith. We can go, you'd go to a lot of different places on that one, and just very simple examples of that. But here's my definition that I woke up with this morning. Knowing we're gonna talk about this verse today. My definition of faith that I kind of got a hold of this morning is entering into an invitation. Now, this is the going back to some of Brad Scott's teachings.
Okay.
One of the first teachings I heard from Brad, this was back in many moons ago, and it was in Las Vegas, Nevada. We were there together doing a conference, and he said, grace is an invitation to enter in. Faith is accepting the invitation. So he put it as the Father offering us by His grace an invitation to enter into His house and enter into everything that is about His house. Okay, so the other day when I called you and you were going to be over in South Carolina the other day, and I said, why don't you and Laura stop by and spend a couple of days with us? We were offering you grace. Now, when you pulled up in the driveway, got your bags out of the car, and I won't say how many bags that was, but because that would get me in real trouble with your wife, and she already has a hurricane named after her, so I don't want to go there.
And I have to ride home with her tomorrow.
Yeah. But when you took your bags out of the car and walked into the door, you were accepting the invitation.
Yes.
And in accepting the invitation, that there's things about my house, the same as there is yours, there's rules of the house. When I go to your house, there's rules of the house. And so is it any more difficult than that? No, not unless you put it through a seminary. I actually wanted to try to say that. If you put it through a seminary and you try to come up with, lofty definitions and complicate things.
Right.
So the Father's just giving us an invitation saying, okay, if you want to accept my invitation, here's how you do it.
Well, let's take this to a practical application then. In our last days, in our current environment and situations that have developed, how does one act faithfully? Or how does one demonstrate their belief? And it's not really so much an if anymore, when Yeshua returns, and I believe it's soon, what is it that we need to be doing so that he examines us and says, you're acting out your belief, you're acting faithfully? The context here of this statement, both just prior and just afterwards, two things are being talked about. Yeshua has just spoke a parable about a widow who was going to a certain judge who did not fear Elohim or did not regard man, and she went to him persistently, saying, do right to me on my adversary. And in verse 5 it says, because this widow troubles me, I shall do right to her, lest by her continual coming she wears me out. What has often been preached out of this context is that you and I should approach the Father persistently in prayer until we wear him out with our request, and the Father in heaven throws up his hands and says, enough.
Yeah.
Just give it to him.
Which is the premise that, and this is a big thing for people, I think, for many people I've talked to, is this premise that he's really, his default mode, I think you mentioned this the other day, his default mode is to withhold.
Mm-hmm.
But instead his default mode is to give.
Mercy and compassion.
Is mercy, compassion what we need? I mean, what good father has a default mode of, I'm not going to give you that until you say the right words. That kind of thing. No.
Wait. You just said, you say the right words. How many times has it entered into our heads, the reason that my prayer wasn't answered, I didn't pray my prayer in such sentence structure that I got the formula exactly right.
Yeah.
Let me just throw this out. This wasn't intended here. But when you and I believe that we have to pray and the magic formula, whatever that is, then we're focusing more on an incantation to appease the Father so that he would be forced to give to us what we want. That's not good theology. That's not good doctrine. Number one, the Father does not look to be appeased.
Yeah.
Appeasing is what we do with idols and demonic gods, because their default response to us is that of anger and wrath unless we appease them and make them happy.
Mm-hmm.
The Father is not looking for you and I to make him happy so that he'll be good to us. It's the same mindset that says, I'm going to go into prayer with so much praise that he just has to like me. He already loves us.
Yeah.
He's looking for the sincerity of our heart and the purity of our motives to answer our prayers. So you may not get the sentence right, but a verse that my dad quoted very often is, before we ask, he has knowledge of our need.
Yeah.
So Yah already knows what the need is. He's just asking that you and I talk to him about it.
Let's look at it. So I just got this picture in my head. So, yeah, I know. It's kind of crazy. So Daniel and Kate's and the boys are out of town at a wedding. And we're, kind of looking for the boys to be back this week. And what happens is when Reuben walks in the door, the first thing that he says is, "Knack, Nana." He's like, yeah, because he knows that Nana has snacks, okay? And it's Knack, but that's just how it comes out. Kathy does not respond to his words. Kathy responds to his cuteness. Okay, I mean, she's responding to
So we got to get cute with the father.
We got yeah. So yeah, that could be. I mean, yeah, it could be. So he walks in the door, and his first thing is he wants a snack because he knows that Nana is very famous for snacks. Well, Kathy's already prepared. She's already gone to the store. She's already bought the snacks that he likes. But when he walks in, we wait for him to say, "Knack, Nana," and she opens the drawer where his knacks are, and she gives them to him. I mean, again, do we make things more difficult than they are? So we respond to two things with our grandchildren: cute and obedience.
Now you set me on a trail here. My mom has a certain drawer in her kitchen, and it's the second from the bottom in the row of drawers that I'm talking about. And the grandkids know where that drawer is at.
Second from the bottom. Let me write that down.
So they just go over, and if they're not strong enough to pull that drawer out yet, at least they're standing there and they're asking cookie, cracker, chip, whatever. When I go home to Mom's, I know where the potato chips are. That's what's important to me. But Mike, I remember years ago, long years ago, I had moved out of the house and was married and had my own home. And I had come home to visit Mom, and I asked if I could have something. And she said, "When my children come to my house, I want them to know that whatever I have is theirs. You don't have to ask me if you can have something. You know where it's at. Go get it." The Father has the same heart. I want my children to know that whatever I have is theirs. You just need to come and know how to receive it, how to put your hand on it. Mike, faithfulness.
Mm-hmm.
When I know that I'm doing everything that I can to walk faithfully before Him, even those times where my faithfulness is lacking, the Father has superabundant grace and mercy and compassion, a willingness to be honest with me and deal with the real me instead of the one that I want to dress up and present to Him. And I can come to Him, and He's not offering us chips, cookies, and snacks. He's offering us the commodities of belief, those things that will make a difference in our life. This widow that Yeshua is referencing here, she was persistent. Belief is that which is demonstrated by persistence. It is knowing what belongs to you and the Father, knowing what He has apportioned to you, and persistently pursuing that until you get it. Not throwing up your hands and say, "Well, He just doesn't want me to have it. I don't know why. He wants everybody else to have money, or He wants everyone else to have success, or He wants everyone else to have a business that actually works, etc." But somehow I'm unique and different, and I'm the stepchild that really would prefer standing in the corner. Our attitude is that if I pursue Him in this, or if I pursue with persistence my own activity, we're not going to sit in a rocking chair on the front porch and say, "Well, He'll give it to me when He's ready." You and I need to demonstrate, I believe that the Father has apportioned this to me. He has offered this success to me, or this achievement to me, or this goal to me. I need to be persistent and go after it. This unjust judge gave the woman what she was asking for. How much more The righteous and just Father will look on those that are consistent in their pursuit of what they know belongs to them, that He will enable them to achieve it. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So this whole thing of the unjust judge, I think to me the context of that is that the pursuit is about her finding herself. So the pursuit of what we feel are unanswered prayers are, first of all, figuring out, is this something we really desire? Okay, because it's like, again, with Reuben, he comes in, the knack, Nana, and it's like, you don't really want a knack, do you? Yeah, yes, I do. Yes, I do. It's that persistent. Yeah, no, you really don't. You're not hungry. Yes, I am. And so he ends up winning. Now, we weren't trying to withhold anything from him, but it was about, are you really sure about this? So this unjust judge is being used basically so that the woman can figure out, is this really what I'm needing to pursue? In that walk, of coming back. She was, and whether this is an actual or a parable, probably more of a parable, it's designed to tell us that in the conversation of our desires, we should be then thinking through, okay, is this really where I need to go? Do I need to adjust this? Was her request at the end the same as her request at the beginning, or had it been modified just a little bit because it caused her time to think through it?
We remember the Torah is very plain. Do not abuse widows and orphans. Yah says, they belong to me, and I will repay. This widow had an adversary that evidently was offending her or violating her by some means, and she went to the one that was supposed to rectify that situation, who was reluctant to do so, reluctant to obey the Torah. He did not fear Elohim. Yah says that this woman belongs to him. So, do you and I believe that we belong to him? Do we believe that he will act in our behalf? Has he declared, you are my covenant child, you have a covenant relationship with me through the blood of my son, therefore I will guard you. That whole covenant between the pieces that he demonstrated with Abraham, he positioned himself as the one, I will pay the penalty for the violation of this covenant. Not that I'm going to violate it, you will violate it, but I will take on the responsibility of its violation. How much more in our walk in relationship with him is Yah saying, I've already paid the penalty through Yeshua for the violation of our relationship. Now come to me, let's deal with this, but know you're mine. If there should be any encouragement for you and I in these days of upheaval, especially in our nation, it is this, that we belong to him. You can't allow yourself to forget that fact. Sometimes through your own choices that you realize that wasn't a righteous choice, we feel ostracized and cut off and kicked out in the backyard. You belong to him. If my adult children, my adult daughters, should do something that it strains our relationship, they will never stop being my daughters. My grandkids, they're at an age where sometimes they get a little out of the boundaries. No. And they have to be set back in the boundaries. Somewhat recently, my grandson Gavin was at the house, and I forget exactly what he did, but I had to get stern with him. And you could see on his face that he wasn't happy about it. Now, Laura's wondering, what did you say to him? Etc. But the understanding that the boy has to learn to mind.
Yeah.
And if he don't learn to mind around here, there's going to be some consequences. Now later on, I made sure that he understood, Papa still loves you. You know, I'm not mad at you, but you're going to act and cooperate within the boundaries of this house. You mentioned the rules of the house.
Mm-hmm.
That's love.
Yeah.
Love enforces the boundaries.
Exactly. Yeah, there's no doubt. I mean, it's funny because Reuben doesn't come to me for the snacks; it goes to Nana. Okay, it's always. But yeah, this verse that we need to wrap up. I know this verse. There's many verses in Scripture that you could say are interesting. This is a verse that's one of my favorites, kind of thing. This verse of when the Son of Man returns, will he find faithfulness upon the earth? This verse goes into a category of mine called intriguing. It's a verse that, what makes it intriguing is that it's a question that's not answered. I see Messiah as kind of sitting there in the midst of all this thing, and it's more of a pondering verse of his own. It's kind of an under the breath verse. It's like David with his warriors sitting in the cave, to have a drink of the water from the well, and all of a sudden the guys burst through the cave and go get this water for him. It's more of an under the breath pondering thing. But here's what makes it more intriguing, is that you and I, all of us, we've been given the ability to answer the question.
Mm.
It's a question he could not answer. But it will be a question that we answer at his return.
So he threw the gauntlet down. It's a challenge.
Yeah, and so, in a message I did recently, you heard, I said at the end, I reworked the verse just a little bit and said, when the Son of Man returns, will he find the faithful running toward his kingdom? Or will he find people hiding in fear, trying to make exile great again?
Okay, yeah.
I mean, we got a choice, folks. This is really not something that you're going to be right in the middle of. This is not like, well, they kind of were on the path, but no, the decision this is where we're heading, that we're being forced into the answer of the question.
Right.
And there's not going to be a gray area in the end. It will be a yes, and this can be a corporate yes, but the corporate yes is always made up of individual yeses.
Well, let's final thought then on that. You mentioned the corporate. As Americans, we have been taught Greek culture to think of the individual.
Yeah, and that goes through other countries. We're talking to Canada, South Africa, a lot of places. It's all about the Western
society. It's the individual. Hebraic culture is the community. So we're not alone. You're not alone. Your walk and Mike's walk, my walk, they're all intertwined. It's almost as if everything everyone else does along with us, it all averages out to a single answer, or a single sum, if you will. So you do have a role to play that is important. Another mindset that kind of creeps in sometimes is, well, those that are in the media, those that are on YouTube, those that have a ministry, those that have a title of some sort, they're the ones that's important. The rest of us are just kind of following it. No. Your walk is as important, if not more important, than those that may every once in a while hold a microphone or stand in front of a camera or write a book or have some kind of sense of importance. We're all in this together. We all walk together. We're a community, a corporate entity. And when Yeshua is asking the question, will he find belief? Will his bride be a believing bride? Or will his bride have thrown up her hands in disgust and disappointment and no longer pay attention? I think we know the answer to that.
Yeah.
There is a remnant, called out assembly in these last days that Yah is preparing to have the right heart, the right attitude, the right focus, and to be looking up, expecting the return of the bridegroom. So with that, thank you so much for your time. You're joining us today. We'd love to hear from you. If you have comments or questions, please list them on the area below on the video at YouTube, and we'd love to hear what you have to say. So until next week, Mike.
Been good. I just got one thing to say. I'm hungry. I want a snack.
We'll see you again next week. Shalom.
Shalom.